No, it's very strange. I've been trolled by many people, including Hollywood celebrities, all kinds of figures on the internet, but never a company before. All I did was point out that I didn't think their tweet was particularly funny. It seemed to be attacking Novak and people like him who choose not to take the vaccine. And I don't think that it's the place of an airline to say that. And then they quote tweeted me with their 500,000 followers and tried to attack the quality of my broadcasting, which I think is outrageous. It's sixth form level politics. But the problem here is that they were discriminating against a large portion of their customer base. I took a Ryanair flight on Friday, just gone, that recently. I will never fly with them again. I'm sure there are many people who saw this Twitter conversation that thought, actually, I don't want to be lectured to by a commercial airline. It's not their place to talk politics to me. I will not fly with them again. And this is where the saying "go woke, go broke" comes from, isn't it? Because we have to vote with our wallets. Do we want a company that is producing a high quality good and service for us, or do we want a company that will lecture to us about social justice from their political persuasion? I don't want the latter. I'd rather have the former.
Angelica, Calvin makes the point that this is something that's been said. There are customers involved. Actually, the other people, it seems to me, as part of the democratic process that have been completely eclipsed in this equation, where we're talking about Ryanair, are the people who work for Ryanair. Is this a democratic exercise where Ryanair are speaking for every single person who works for them, the baggage handlers, the security guys, the cleaners who clean the loos in Michael O'Leary's office? That would be a democratic exercise. If you're entering into a public political debate, you need to have a democratic mandate for saying something controversial, don't you?
I don't think you need a mandate. They're not a government, so no. And I think Ryanair is known for being kind of controversial in their social media. I don't think it's that big a deal, to be honest. I think we expect a slightly light, playful tone for them. They obviously know their demographic and they think it's something that will go down well with their audience.
Calvin, they wouldn't do it if it didn't make commercial sense. That's what Angelica's saying.
I'll tell you why I think it is a big deal, because it's the issue that they've chosen, the bandwagon they've chosen to jump on. So we're talking about a case of bodily autonomy. We're talking about vaccine mandates. We're talking about people having the right to choose what medication they put into their body or not. And this is the conversation that Novak Djokovic got involved in. And this is the conversation that Ryanair has jumped on and essentially discriminated against. Now, Djokovic said it's his decision to make over his body, and that is more important to him than the title or anything else. I think that's a very noble stance to make. He's potentially giving up great wins and successes to make a principled stance, and I think that's admirable. Now, for someone to come down, or a company to come down and say, no, that's wrong, and actually we think you're making a mistake, and that's not talking to him, that's talking to a whole swathe of people who've also made this decision to actually choose what goes into their body or not. Or even if they haven't, even if people have been vaccinated, they can still believe in the personal choice of bodily autonomy. And we saw, Colin mentioned Ben & Jerry's in the lead up to this conversation. We've seen companies like this throughout. Ben & Jerry's in particular criticised Priti Patel for not wanting to, for wanting to clamp down on illegal immigration. Now, again, that's a thing that I think most people in this country at the moment would be in favour of, clamping down on illegal immigration. Now, for a company to come out and against a popular decision isn't them knowing their audience, I don't think. It's them wanting to have a bit of banter, in the case of Ryanair, or wanting to be political in the case of Ben & Jerry's, and making a mistake.
A mistake. Angelica, you don't think it is a mistake, but I just wonder, where you sit right now. We've had a NHS doctor who declined to have a jab. No, not a headbanger. And part of what I would suggest, and I don't, I'm jabbed, but part I would suggest of a substantial minority of thoughtful, reasonable people who just don't think actually that mandatory jabs are a particularly good idea. So this is a marginal discussion. It's not something where 99% of people think it's a terrible idea. That would make more sense if right now we're getting onto it. It's something that is moot.
I think companies should be encouraging people to get the vaccine. So I personally don't have an issue with Ryanair sharing something like that. I do actually think there's a responsibility. Where you stand on the vaccine is where you'll stand on issues like this. For me personally, and again, we're talking about a younger demographic that Ryanair as a low-cost airline will appeal to. I don't see there being an issue them encouraging people to get the vaccine. I understand your point about autonomy, but they do have an audience that want to listen to them, and they have just made a decision. They're not a government, they're a company, and they're allowed to have a political stance on things. I don't think there's a problem with that.
Angelica, just on Calvin's point, he was expanding it out to other companies as well. Do you see no distinctions? Does it not matter what the company is, whether they're flogging you airline seats or whether they're flogging you ice cream? There should be no subject off limits. We can talk about whether it's vaccines that are compulsory or whether it's Ukraine. Doesn't matter. Companies have a right to speak on any subject. Is that what we're saying?
I think companies do have a right to speak on topics, and I think that's also come out of an expectation with the customer. Customers are actually expecting brands to be more political now. You know, you talk about woke as if it's a negative thing, but we're also talking about customers who are socially and politically aware and informed, and they want and connect with businesses that are also the same. So I don't have an issue with brands weighing in on political matters. I think we actually expect it quite a lot of the time now.
Well, the more it happens, the more people get to come to expect it, I suppose. Calvin, just reflect on this point, if you would, the point I'm making about there being a democratic deficit here. It just seems to me, I think it will seem to a lot of our viewers, that you're getting companies, I mean, I mentioned Yorkshire Tea. I don't know how they arrived at the decision to support Black Lives Matter. Maybe they're, lowly paid people working for Yorkshire Tea were beating a path to the marketing department's door and saying you must do something to support Black Lives Matter. I don't suspect that's how it really happened. I suspect it was a small gaggle of highly networked, highly credentialed, highly paid executives who took it upon themselves to decide that was the corporate direction they wanted to go in. It was nothing about democracy.
Of course, it's the metropolitan liberal elite once again lecturing to us plebs on how to think and how to live our lives and what to put in our bodies. And I've actually had DMs from pilots and air stewardesses who have said, these people on Twitter do not represent me. I don't think it's appropriate for them to be political in this way. I think the only reason Angelica agrees with them is because they fall in line with her politics. A company has a duty to their shareholders and to their customers. That is it. It's as simple as that. They don't have a duty to be political in this way. And companies like Ryanair in particular, they've won, 6 years in a row they won Worst Airline. They were awarded that booby prize because they're a terrible customer, a terrible company. So if they focused on customer service, improving their service, improving their products, maybe we would be in a better place. But instead, they're focusing on lecturing people like me who choose to make decisions based on our own risk analysis rather than being lectured to by the higher-ups, the metropolitan liberal elites. I think it's disgusting, it's inappropriate, it's not their place, and they should pipe down.
But they did want publicity, and they have achieved it because we're debating it on air, so it got what they wanted from it.
Angelica, just on I'll let you answer the point that Calvin made there, that actually you're agreeing with Ryanair because you agree with their politics. And actually, if they were saying something that you found discordant, if they were saying something that was perhaps a little more less progressive and more transgressive or more traditionalistic, maybe you'd be less comfortable with it.
Well, I think my politics on this issue around the vaccine is a popular view. So there isn't an element where you're right. I mean, OK, you're not agreeing with me, but the majority of people are pro-vaccine, I believe.
Calvin?
Believe, based on what? Do you have any data to back that up? That's quite a statement to make. And this is not about being pro-vaccine or not pro-vaccine. This is about being about vaccine mandates. It's about forcing people to put things into their body. It's about personal autonomy. It's about my body, my choice. The people who paint this as a pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine are actually being very disingenuous. I think it's inappropriate for you to do that because most people do believe that vaccines are important. Most people believe in medication. But also, I think that most people would be against you forcing me to put something in my body.
I'm not forcing you. Not forcing.
But that's the policy that we're discussing here, darling.
OK, no, we're not doing darling. We're not doing darling. Unless you're addressing that to me, Calvin, which you might have been. We're on very good terms. Calvin, just on the point that what really shocked me about the whole thing was the way they got into the back and forth. It was one thing making a calculated decision to sit there and say, OK, there's the BBC tweet. There's Djokovic. We think he's made a bit of a fool of himself. That's a considered decision. But what then subsequently unfolded was somebody, presumably on their laptop, I'm guessing it was an individual not done by committee, banging out the tweets, getting involved in a Twitter row with you, which just seems a really odd way to run the marketing of a big company.
Let's be honest, it's unprofessional, isn't it? I assumed it's some, intern who's thinking he's being funny, having a bit of banter online and got a bit too far. That's what I'm assuming. It could be directly from Michael O'Leary because he has form on being political in this case, if we look at what he's done in the situation in Ireland. So maybe it is the company policy to come down on these issues quite hard. But I don't think it's a good business model because they're turning people off.
Angelica Malin, last word to you.
Well, I mean, you came in insulting them in the starting point. There must have been a part of you that expected them to come back with something a little bit spicy as well. And Ryanair is known for these kind of things. It's a publicity stunt at the end of the day, and it's worked. So, we do expect brands, I think, sometimes to be a bit controversial, to be personal on social media. So I'm not surprised that this happened. And, you can't constantly fire out insults to businesses and think that they're not going to respond at all.